Education background.
Education background. I'm going to doing a maths degree actually. I've done some. I'm interested in science. I'm a musician as well.
There's no crowd.
Okay. So that's good because. Sorry, brother. That's quite good because modern evolutionary biology is all based on mathematics.
Yeah, it is.
So I heard a talk recently by a very prominent evolutionary biologist, and he says at the cutting edge, if you want to get into the industry, you need to study population genetics, and to do that you need maths.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So look, I come from the view that I believe Darwinian evolution is speculative, it's based on a probabilistic framework, it has assumptions, and its core mechanism is being challenged with alternatives.
What's the alternative?
Well, there's many alternatives, but before I get into that, what I want to know is what is your position? Like, I'm a creationist from the perspective that I believe there is a creator, but I believe the term creationist is inescapable because we all believe in creation. The only difference is I believe there is an original starting point, which is God. He created everything. And from your perspective, I'm assuming you don't believe in God, but you do believe there was the first cell, the first self-replicating molecule.
I always say I don't know about God. I don't believe really that I don't think there's enough evidence to say that there is a God. There is a God, or ever was a God. So that's my stance on that. I don't think there is, but if you present me with the evidence, then I'll change my mind.
Okay. And what's your thoughts about Darwinian evolution?
I think there's enough evidence to say it's practically fact, and there's not. I wouldn't say there's many actually viable alternatives.
Okay. Do you believe it's true? Like that is what the best explanation is?
I think at the moment that's the best explanation, and there's the best explanation there has ever been, and it's pretty unarguable. It's one of the best tests. It's just I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me it's just a theory. It is just. I mean, it is just a theory. But,
the thing is,
theory is one of the best tested theories out there. It's just the best.
Well, look, the highest that science can reach in terms of certainty is a theory.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when somebody says, "I got a theory that 9/11 was an inside job," or whatever, right? That's just a random hodgepodge idea. But when a scientist says theory, they're referring to something which takes account of a broad
everything
body of evidence with different subfields and all the rest. But I think what we need to do first is define a few terms. Evolution simply means change in gene frequencies in a population over time.
Yeah.
It doesn't really mean anything more than that. So evolution, is it a theory, is it a fact? It's just an observation. We know evolution to be true.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, Darwinian evolution is the particular claim that there's a tree of life, starting off with the first origin of life, the first self-replicating cell, which led to all of the biodiversity. And this was led by natural selection working on random mutations.
Yes.
Now, I think this idea, and when I was at school, I was taught like this is it. This is the Holy Grail. We got it. However, when you actually look at the works of evolutionary biologists, you see it is actually a very controversial idea. It is not set in stone, and there's actually many problems with it.
Okay.
I'll give you one. Darwin said that this has to work gradually. There has to be a very small, incremental, gradual, adaptive benefit, which is then accumulated by natural selection. But as paleontologists have been looking at the fossil record, they've been basically saying the trade secret of our industry is there is no gradualism. This is what Stephen Jay Gould said, right? That he came up with his alternative, the punctuated equilibrium theory, right? So the fundamental assumption of Darwinism, which is slow mutations, random mutations, is actually been challenged by mainstream paleontologists.
Okay, so what's their alternative? Are you saying that they have found things that it hasn't gone gradually, it's gone from one stage to another?
According to their interpretation.
Okay.
So what they say
they may have found that. They may have found something that contradicts what they have, but I would say that there's way too much evidence for Darwin.
So what would you say is the main lines of evidence?
Main lines of evidence of the countless fossils that are always found and just put into the records of the paleontology. And I'm not a biologist, so I don't. I've just done biology. That's all I know. But I know that the method is thorough.
The method is?
The method is thorough,
Okay.
and I kind of trust the theory. I trust their methodology.
But what is it about the fossil record that supports the Darwinian paradigm? Because I can use
it's gradual. Yeah.
No, well, not really. A lot of paleontologists are saying
we can observe the gradual change on a smaller scale. As you scale down, this is why you get immune to antibiotics. Well, the bacteria gets immune to antibiotics. It happens on a small scale because they can breed fast. So they double every X amount of seconds.
Yeah, they have a very quick generation.
It's literally you're observing Darwinian evolution in a petri dish.
Well,
you're observing this because the random mutations, and then the strongest ones survive, then they get stronger. That's literally the foundation of what you just told me. So,
you see, that thing there, it's a non-starter to use that to then look at the fossil record and say we've got the same thing, because when we actually look at the fossil record, we have things which Darwin pointed out himself which were not in line with his theory. Chapter 6 of The Origin of Species, Darwin says problems with the theory, right? And one of the problems he points out is the Cambrian explosion. That we had this, in geological times, it was a
sudden increase of
biodiversity. And as more and more research has been done on the Cambrian period, this problem has gotten worse, which is why Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge, and these are atheist evolutionary biologists, what they basically said is gradualism doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
And you may think, well, we can drop gradualism, we'll still have Darwinism. Well, you can't, because Darwin left gradualism, extreme gradualism, as a falsification test for his theory. And recently we've also observed that lizards on an island, they go through evolutionary change, which should take millions of years. They do that within thousands of years. Actually, not thousands of years, a much quicker time scale. So changes that should have been done in thousands of years were done in basically a lifetime, like 20, 30
Okay,
years.
so wait, can you tell me the name of that?
This is on, if you just put Lizard Evolution Island.
Lizard Evolution on a single island?
Island, yeah. So this was when a new lizard was introduced in an island. The whole idea of Darwinian evolution is that you have...
Right, but that change will take thousands of years.
Yeah, it should have taken
there's a change that should have taken...
Basically, the change was much, much faster.
Okay.
And the thing is, evolution itself is not a term which you can only subscribe to Darwinism. Evolution was known before Darwin. All Darwin did is he came up with a mechanism. Now, his mechanism fundamentally assumed that mutations have to be random, variations have to be random, and also that you have to have gradualism.
Yeah.
Since we now have observed with our own eyes that gradualism has been challenged by species that we can observe in a lifetime, and also in the fossil record, we know that the theory is in serious trouble.
All right, so how many papers were on this subject of the lizard?
Well, at the moment, that's just one example. I'll give you a few more.
Okay, so you can give me lots of points against it. I'm not an expert on the subject. Is your point going to conclude that there is no evolution?
No, evolution, like we described.
It might not be as we described it as we are taught in school. It might not be like that. But
look, evolution is change in gene frequencies in a population over time.
Yeah, that's true. That's undeniable.
So that's trivial, because there's nothing that leads that to the tree of life, or natural selection.
Wait, there's nothing that leads
you can't equivocate
gradual change to the tree of life.
Yeah,
so,
because there's no trajectory. Remember, the tree of life is the idea that there's one origin, and grass, you, me, human beings, mosquitoes, they all go back to the last universal common ancestor.
I disagree. I'd say that there is a logic that can follow that kind of proves that it's kind of logical, isn't it? You have different environments. You have things that adapt to different environments, and that leads on to different things being made, different species.
Because remember, what Darwin came up with was this. you can look at all of life right now, and you can look at all the similarities, and
You all go down to one.
well, that's what he assumed. But people before him already came up with this idea that there's things which are similar, so they must have a common ancestor. The only reason why they started taking this idea seriously is because he proposed a mechanism, which was natural selection working on variations. Now the
So this
reason,
is true. You agree with natural selection about the variations and how this.
yeah, but it's a trivial fact.
Yeah.
But his idea was this is what led the tree of life.
Okay. So what's your
So my point here is this: I can look, and not only I, evolutionary biologists can look at the same data, and they can say, well, mutation-driven evolution, which was a rival to Darwinism, which is that you don't have small mutations, you actually have what is known as hopeful monsters, right? Richard Goldsmith, he's an evolutionary biologist, he came up with this idea. Or you can come up with Lamarckian evolution, which was an idea which went back to John Baptiste Lamarck. Or you can go back to a new idea, which is known as evolution by natural genetic engineering. Now, these are complete alternatives to Darwinian evolution. Now, we are told that Darwinian evolution is a fact, is true. But if it was a fact, then these alternatives would not exist.
So you're saying that there are alternatives to it, but you're from what I'm hearing, they all seem to go back to the same thing. So they all seem to have the same result.
In what way?
They all the same result as things change.
Yeah, but the thing is, evolution, if you simply define it as biological change over time, today we define it in terms of population genetics, but say if we define it purely as change over time, biological change over time, this goes back 3,000 years. This was known by the ancient Hindus, it was known by the ancient Greeks, it was known by the Chinese as well, and it was completely trivial and uncontroversial. The reason why evolution became controversial is when Darwin assumed there was one origin, there was a tree of life, and this was driven by random mutations being accumulated by natural selection, so random variations. That's the controversial part. And the thing about that controversial part is we've been told that this is true when, if you look at evolutionary biology, there is a lot of dispute about that central claim.
Oh, well, a lot of dispute compared with the amount of evidence they have. I would, you have these theories, you have the best tested theories, evolution and quantum theory, okay?
Evolution is not a theory, Darwinian evolution is the theory,
okay,
evolution is the observation.
Okay, Darwinian evolution, you have all the best tested theories, they're all, the biggest stars attract the most controversy. That you got that concept, and of course you'll have alternatives, of course, but at the moment there's too much evidence to just dismiss Darwinian evolution.
Okay.
Of course there's. When you come out with me, when you come out to me with 1,000 different papers from 1,000 different universities saying this is true, this completely blows Darwinian evolution out of the water, then I'll go, okay, fair enough.
So,
but you're probably. I mean, I'll probably.
You're saying it's not like a fringe opinion.
Yeah, I'd say that yes, to any big theory you can find lots and lots of good counterpoints. To any good point you can find lots of good counterpoints. But just because there are good counterpoints doesn't mean that all these counterpoints accumulate to a disproof.
No, it doesn't accumulate to a disproof. What it does show is that this is a very speculative theory.
Okay.
And one of the things that Darwin did in The Origin of Species, which is why I respect him more than I respect people like Richard Dawkins and others, is right at the beginning of The Origin of Species, he says, you can take all of the facts in this book. By facts, he means observation. So some of the facts that we know today from the different fields are, we know things from biochemistry, we know things from genetics, we know things from anatomy, from psychology, from linguistics. You can take all these facts and you can independent origins, which is evolution happening in parallel directions, or something like evolution by self-organization as proposed by Stuart Kaufman. All of these are different evolutionary models proposed by atheist evolutionary biologists. No school teaches them, no university teaches them.
Yeah.
And you actually find out things like, just a few weeks ago there's a book published by Oxford University called Darwinism as Religion. and it's written by an atheist philosopher of science. And what he goes on to say is that Darwin's theory of evolution, it became into a religion. Until today, it is actually a type of meta-narrative. It's a type of religion. Because of this, what we are taught in school is actually incorrect. It's not the only game in town. And there's lots of assumptions and problems.
I agree with your point that they do unfortunately say this is the only thing. I mean, actually no, they don't. To be fair, we were always taught to say it's a theory.
But that's what. But remember, science. The highest standard you can achieve in science is theory.
Yeah.
That's the highest standard.
No, but that's what we weren't taught. This is the only thing.
No, that's if you go to any school.
Oh yeah, I was.
So was I.
I'm sorry. I was modern. I mean, I had a pretty modern experience of education today, and I would say when I was taught this, I came. It was a very diverse school, so a lot of different beliefs and stuff. So they kind of highlighted it's a theory. It can be contradicted. So you shouldn't take it as gospel. So. And obviously everyone has different beliefs, but I chose to believe the evidence that was presented to me. And, I'm not a biologist, so all these different types of things, I could probably go home and look it up, but I probably wouldn't understand half of it because I'm not a biologist.
But the question is, why do you believe something when you don't understand it?
Okay,
is it a sociological thing?
I know it's more of a
trust.
I can put everything out and say I don't fully understand biology. Okay? I can also say I fully don't understand that. I don't fully understand anything. Neither do you. Neither does anyone. But I can say with pretty good confidence that with the knowledge I do have, I have reasonable belief I have a reason to believe what's presented to me because of what I understand. And I think that's pretty reasonable. And there may be different theories.
What if I was to make a claim? If I was to make a claim that Darwinian evolution, it may be modified in the next 100 years, beyond recognition, or completely discarded. What would you say of that claim?
Maybe it will.
And do you know who makes this claim? Richard Dawkins in his book, A Devil's Chaplain. This is one of his lesser-known works. Now, what that goes to show is that the way that science works is you can get new data which challenges your previous conclusions. Yeah. Secondly, the same data can give rise to multiple competing hypotheses, multiple competing theories. Now, if in school we are taught this, then that'll be fine. But when I was in school and I studied I believe what was quite a posh school in North Oxford, a high school there called Cherwell College, we were not taught this is an idea and this has competing hypotheses. We were told this is it. This is it. And one of the things which is used about the theory is that it is used to say that everything around us which looks apparently designed is an illusion. It's a blind watchmaker. And where I disagree, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me here, is when you have a scientific theory, and this scientific theory has left the realm of science and has gone onto metaphysics and tries to challenge the idea of God by saying things look apparently designed, but they're actually adaptations due to random mutations and natural selection has created them that way. I think that's a dangerous category mistake.
So to sum up, you're kind of saying that. Sorry, there's a lot of interest taken. They're saying that we're taught that everything is this one theory to contradict all the other religious theories.
No. I'm saying don't bring religion into it.
Okay.
I'm saying, say, general relativity.
Yeah.
General relativity is a fantastic theory. So is quantum mechanics. Yet both of these theories contradict each other at a fundamental level. They both can't be true. Now, what scientists are trying to do...
No. There's no. We don't have quantum mechanics. I don't fully understand quantum mechanics or general relativity because they're incredibly insanely hard. But what I do know is that what you said there was kind of they're not contradict. They are a bit funny together, but they
can't be absolutely true.
No, there can be a instance where they're both true, but they're trying to live. Okay? So
What-
you can't say they're both contradictory, both two polar opposites, and they can't work together.
At the moment,
because they might be able to work together. At the moment, they're trying to
yeah,
look for. a reason.
as it stands right now in physics, the basic assumptions of both of them, there's a contradiction between them.
But that doesn't mean they can't be
No,
true.
but they both can't be absolutely true. So what scientists are
They're
trying
trying to
do,
alter both of them to work together. Yeah.
well, at the moment they realize both of them are non-complementary paradigms. You can't make them work. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to come up with a theory of quantum gravity.
Yes.
Right? Now, when it comes to evolutionary biology, I would have loved it if I was taught in school. Do you know what? There's this idea of Darwinian evolution, but do you know what? There's also the idea of Lamarckian evolution, mutationism,
I think
natural genetic engineering. But we're just told this is it.
Yeah, Lamarckian evolution. I think there was a little bit, but not much.
Do you know what it's normally taught as?
It's kind of taught as the other theory that was wrong. Yeah.
Yes. And the interesting thing about Lamarckian evolution was Lamarck published his work about 50 years before Darwin. The difference between Lamarck and Darwin, Lamarck was someone who believed in God but not religion. He was a deist. So he didn't see design as an illusion, which is the main conflict between God and Darwinian evolution, that the claim that design is an illusion, right? Now, Lamarck's theory has been brought back to life in the last couple of years because of epigenetics, right? And because of we've seen that, you know, that famous drawing of the giraffe.
Yeah.
It keeps trying to stretch out its neck, and then those changes are passed on to its offspring.
Oh, so
That's
the
Lamarckian. It's an
whatever.
intentional thing, right?
It can do.
Yeah. We've actually got some recent experiments which have shown Lamarckian evolution is observable, right? And now how many generations that goes down, that's another question. That's something they're going to be exploring. But what I didn't like...
Just to confirm, the Lamarckian evolution is the one where it's like it wants to extend it. So
Yeah. It's a conscious... It's basically like the blacksmith's strong arms.
Yeah.
The blacksmith, he has these arms, then he procreates, and those children inherit those traits.
Okay.
Now, the inheritance of acquired characteristics, as it's known, was an idea which was ridiculed. Now, why? This is where I disagree, because I believe that if Darwinian evolution was taught, not as a religion, not as a meta-narrative, but was taught the way that Darwin actually proposed it, which was a theory which had anomalies, which he admitted to. He admitted there was other theories possible on the data, and lastly, he also admitted something which we're not taught, which is you can be someone who believes in God and believes in Darwinian evolution, and there's absolutely no contradiction between the two. Neo-Darwinism, which came around in the 1940s, was militantly atheist, right, which was put together by mathematicians, by the way, and this was used as a baton to bash religious people for the last 70 years, and that's the real crux of the issue. And as a mathematician, maybe you should do something to change that.
maybe. I mean, my perspective,
You've heard of JBS Holding, right? JBS Holding? He's one of the founders of Neo-Darwinism. He's a mathematician.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's all these different theories. They are taught by they are taught as the kind of theories that were wrong. But I think you kind of have a want. So you kind of have a want to reintroduce these theories as
not
more
myself.
of a true.
No, I don't want to do that, because these theories, especially things like evolution by natural genetic engineering and evolution by self-organization, these are new, and these have been introduced by atheist evolutionary biologists.
Maybe when they're better tested, they'll be taught.
Well, they are actually tested.
Or
and
maybe when they've been tested over, Darwinian evolution is an old theory, and it has stood the test of time, and it's like there's not many.
One of the reasons it stood the test of time is because of the philosophical naturalism that is used to underpin it. Because it's used as a way. Because look, if there is no God, this is from a neo-Darwinian perspective. If there is no God, then nature has to do the creating, and design has to be an illusion. If that's the basis, then no matter how many holes are in the theory, which there are a lot of holes at the moment, this theory will still stand because it's the only naturalistic explanation out there at the moment. Which is why why it will survive for the next 1,000 years.
To be honest, from my perspective, I would say as long as the theory is underpinned, because I would say that design is religion and everything has to it's naturally and all the natural selection and everything. As long as it's based on that.
Why would you say design is an illusion?
Because I don't think that it's possible. I don't think that there was a God who just went poof and everything was there.
Well, look, let me give you an example. Right? The idea of instant creation. In the Quran, just to give you the Islamic perspective, because I'm not sure if you come from a Christian background.
I don't
In the Quran, God says, when I intend to create something, I say be and it is. And in the Quran, God created Jesus by saying be and it is. But Jesus was created over a period of 9 months. So we don't necessarily believe in instant creation. There may be a naturalistic mechanism that is discoverable in some way or shape or form, in some limited capacity. But the basic idea that design is an illusion is only possible if someone subscribes to the idea that Darwinian evolution is absolutely true. And I think there is no reason to believe it is absolutely true. But I think there's lots of reasons to believe it's speculative, it has assumptions which are being challenged, and it has lots of alternatives.
Maybe that's true.
And what you don't want to do, Luke, right? What you don't want to do is, you have a short life, I have a short life. If we are brought up with this idea, if we're socially engineered with this idea that everything that looks designed is actually an illusion, I think that's a type of child abuse if you're brought up with a belief which is patently false.
I think you could say that about...
You can.
You could say that about the indoctrination of everyone who is brought up with religion.
If the religion's false, yeah, you can.
Yeah, but if the religion is false.
But this we know is false, because this is something... No, we know it's false, that it's absolutely true. We know it's a model.
Okay, no. I would say... No, we don't know that it's absolutely false.
Because nothing in science can be absolutely true.
No, that's untrue.
So what's something in science, and I'm not talking about observation, I'm talking about theory.
What theory is absolutely true?
There can be no theory that's absolutely true.
But yes, but you're using the fact that nothing can be absolutely 100% proven to try and prove your own clouded religious beliefs.
No, I'm not. What I'm trying to do is this.
You can say that, no, I can't say that there is a theory out there that is 100% true, because
that's not the way science works.
But I'm saying that there's a point that you get to where you say, okay, we have enough evidence, can we just move on now?
You don't do that in science.
No.
And I'll tell you why you don't do that in science. Science is based on induction, is to take observations and come up with general ideas about those inductions. Yeah. Now Darwin, and we could take neo-Darwinism today, we've got all these subfields in biology and they all have data. Using that data, we have this theory of Darwinian evolution and there's other alternatives. We can always get the possibility of new data which will challenge the previous conclusion, or a reinterpretation of the existing data, which is why people like Thomas Kuhn, who's a philosopher of science and a physicist, he wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, and he said, you have these paradigms in science which, because they've been reconfirmed so many times, they become into a type of religious structure. Now, it's very hard to look outside of the paradigm, but what starts happening is, as you have anomalies which keep gradually increasing, you have to have a change in worldview. Now, the anomalies to Darwinian evolution were first pointed out by Darwin himself. Today, those anomalies have only increased. You know Darwin, what he said about the appendix?
Yeah.
Right? He said it was a rudimentary vestigial organ. And that was true for almost 150 years, and we've discovered in the last couple of years, it's no longer considered a vestigial organ. It actually has function. So it has function. Darwin thought it had function.
When did we?
Just a few years ago, about 2009, 2010. We discovered it does actually have function. Its function is to flush the body with good bacteria after cases of cholera, right? So after extreme cases in which all of your good bacteria gets out of your body, it is a safe house for bacteria to hide in, and then they can get flushed into your body. Secondly, it works in the development of young adults. Right? We know of at least 2 different functions. The problem with Darwinists is when they take a scientific conclusion and then they say, that's it, we've worked it out. And I'll give you an example of where I disagree. You might have heard of the idea of junk DNA. Okay, but if you study evolutionary biology from a Darwinian perspective, they also talk about this idea of junk DNA. Junk DNA, that 98% of our genome, we didn't know what it was doing. So it's considered junk. It was considered a living fossil, if you like, a record of our ancestry with apes and fish and whatnot. And because we didn't know a function, some people in evolutionary biology were very vocal. There's no point of looking for a function because we know that this is an evolutionary byproduct. People like Francis Crick, the one who discovered the structure of DNA. Now, he was an atheist and evolutionary biologist, and he said, don't even bother looking for a function because there's not going to be a function because it's an evolutionary byproduct. In 2012, we had the Encyclopedia of DNA Elements, which published studies, which showed most of what we thought was junk is actually functional. Okay. And you see, what a Darwinian assumption about the certainty of the theory held back science for many years when it comes to discovering that those areas that we thought were junk DNA, it will actually help us to help people with things like diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So what I like to do is I like to just say, if somebody wants to believe in Darwinian evolution as a valid model theory paradigm, I would say absolutely no problem with it. But if someone was to say it's true, I would say, wait. Science doesn't lead to truth. Science leads to workable models.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Okay, I would say that Darwinian evolution is a workable model.
Yeah, so would I. So is
well, then we have nothing to argue about.
But the difference is, I would also say Lamarckian evolution is a...
I would say it's a less one.
Well, why would you?
Because there's less evidence for it.
No, but how do you know there's less evidence for it? Because there's no... Look, let me just
give there's less evidence than we have.
Okay, let me just put it this way. I'm going to give you 5 different subfields, and then I'm going to say to you a statement, and you can challenge it or you can leave it. Here's some different subfields. Biochemistry, anatomy, genetics, linguistics, and psychology. Okay. I could use these 5 fields, in paleontology and sociology, right? 7 fields. I could use those 7 fields and say Lamarckian evolution is just as empirically equivalent as Darwinism. I could do that. Because, for example, if you take linguistics, Richard Dawkins says language evolved to help us deceive each other, right? Survival of the fittest. Classical Darwinian idea. But I could use that same idea of linguistics and I could say we acquired language with a sort of intent, which is what Lamarckian evolution is about. So I'm not saying Darwinian evolution is invalid scientifically. I'm saying it's valid, but so is all the rest. And it's not absolutely true.
Okay, maybe, yeah, fair enough. Maybe not. I agree with your speculating with it. It's always good to speculate. I just choose to believe what the kind of general rule is. In
so did I. So did I. Until I looked into it, and I was like, hang on a minute, this is very different to what I thought it was.
Yeah. Okay.
And how old are you now?
18.
18. I'm 32, so you've got another 14 years.
Yeah, I'll see you then, and then I'll...
No problem
at all. I've got a little bit more education under the belt.
The main thing is, in life, the way I think about it is this. Someone can have a PhD, someone can be a professor, but no one has the monopoly on thinking.
Yeah.
We all have brains.
Sure.
And ideas that we may believe to be true, and we may be certain that they're true, they may be falsified in the future, and we need to be brave enough to...
Well, maybe yes. But I would choose to... I kind of have a trust in science that I can, in things that I'm not an expert in, I would say.
We all do.
Yeah,
we all do.
I wouldn't... It's why on the Brexit thing, I was like, when everyone asked me about it, I was like, I'm not an economist and I have my views on it, but I wouldn't advise it. It's the same thing. I don't... It
is, but the difference is this. Because there's a fault line between Darwinian evolution and theology, which is to do with the illusion of design. this is something that is worth researching into. Because I'll give you one example in the human body. You see, if all over our body we have these veins, right?
Yeah.
We have capillaries, we have arteries. Yet there's one part in our brain where there's a leakage of blood. Now that blood, it comes into the brain and is tested for chemicals, for toxins. And if there is found to be toxins, then the body creates a reaction to expel that foreign agent. Now for me, that shouts out design. But for a Darwinist, he would say natural selection. And natural selection is a blanket for anything. It's just a label for a mystery. Now, since there's these two paradigms that we're looking at the same evidence, it is worth me and you, Luke, to actually look at the evidences for both. And that's all I'm trying to open out. I'm not here to say you're wrong. I'm not here to say I'm right. I'm here to say, let's open out the discussion and let's not be socialized into it. I was socialized into it, to be honest. When I was your age, I was just like, whoa, they know what they're talking about. But when I grew older, I decided to challenge what I was socialized into. And I think that's something we will agree.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, because science has always followed what the evidence presents to it, and maybe we're not looking in the right places. Maybe not. But I personally don't believe that science is in a place at the moment to accept any sort of any sort of.
Well,
I mean,
it's how and why. You see, science explains how things work, but not why they exist.
Yeah. Well, yes, because we're not at that point yet. Because we've explained many things with science, but explaining that why we're here and what that's a very complex issue. And we've come up with a theory of how it happened. Why it happened is a much more complex.
Yeah, like if you imagine that car over there, right? I could explain the fuel that goes in, combustion, axial, wheel, lift, drift, drag force. I can describe all those things. Now, Luke, imagine if I described all those things, and then said to you, therefore there's no designer. You would say, hang on a minute, there's a how, which is what you explained to me, science, but there's a why, which is metaphysical. So science is neutral when it comes to God. Science doesn't say there is a God, science doesn't say there isn't a God. Which is why the claim which I like to challenge is when Darwinian evolution or anything else in science is used to say, therefore there's no God. Because I believe that's a category mistake.
I haven't ever come across anything that says therefore there's no God.
Well,
I've never ever.
Have you heard of the God delusion?
Yes.
Okay. The central argument in the God delusion.
That's
Richard Dawkins. Right? The central argument in the God delusion. Remember, Richard Dawkins is not.
Okay, maybe there is one, but I subscribe to the feeling that it's disprovable. It's not disprovable.
Exactly.
But for me, no proof or the absence of disproof doesn't mean a proof.
Of course.
I think that's all we're going to get, and I need to go home. So
but I'd like to give you a gift. You're only 18, so this is a small portable Quran. The thing about the Quran is, we believe truth can be arrived at if someone uses their reason. We don't believe in blind belief. So one of the claims the Quran makes is this: do you not think, do you not reason, do you not reflect? Now, I ask you, I could be lying to you for the last hour. Everyone in the world, they could be deceiving you in some way or another, right? But one person who will never deceive you, or element in your life that if you're sincere will never be deceived by, is your own ability to reason. Now what the Quran does is this: it says, leave aside your society, leave aside your forefathers, leave aside what you desire yourself, and look into the truth using reason. And if you use reason as a criteria, the Quran says you will reach God. And that's something that we can agree, even if we don't agree on God, we can agree reason should be the arbiter for truth.
Yes. Okay. Whether I reach God from that is a different story.
Well, you ask for guidance, isn't it?
Whether I do is a different story.
You might be joining us for prayer next time.
Maybe I will. Who knows?
Take care. Yeah.
You too, man.
It's good speaking to you.